Hello, hello. This is Christina Barr. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about just the world is just kind of awful right now. Last night I saw a thread, and we're going to walk through it. Actually, the person ended up deleting their tweet, so I'm just going to have to tell you about it. I thought maybe I'd just be able to screen share, and we'd just read all these quote retweets. Like on Twitter, someone can tweet something and then you can just choose to retweet it, so the same tweet will be on your thread, your page. But people retweet quoted this a lot and trashed this poor guy who he said the love of his life had an abortion, and he wasn't taking it well, and he unfortunately turned to the internet, and the internet unfortunately showed them how unfortunate they are. So he ended up, I'm not surprised he ended up deleting his tweet, but someone did screenshot it and blotted out his name. But I remember a lot of the terrible comments, so I want to talk about that. Also want to talk about this terrible killing that happened. That we saw the body footage, and I had shared a link on Facebook. I'm not going to play it here for you guys. I know some people couldn't stomach it, but there's a lot of conversations about race, and there's a lot of speculation about things that are personal. I'm getting called. Just got off the phone not too long ago with someone who was saying what was going on, and they were in Tennessee, and they were talking about things that they were hearing and seeing. I don't know that stuff. People are messaging me all sorts of rumors. Though I gotta say, it looked personal, but that information will bear out. But so many people are still quick to jump on to racism, even though that there are 5 officers. And we'll go through Van Jones wrote an article about it on CNN, and we'll talk about the merits of it and the obsession of people trying to find narrative within everything. It just blinds people to actually seeing what's happening when so many people are just so determined to have their talking point. And to me, that starts stripping people sort of their away of their autonomy. They're holding them accountable as individuals for what they've done. It's always this conversations about society as a whole and at large, and it's important to look at that sort of stuff. But it's also important to realize there are bad people in this world who make bad decisions, and it's not always pointing to the white man or Marxism, or folks do it on the right as well. But sometimes we can just look and say these people did a bad thing. Now we can analyze what led to it, but it's important to at least get the facts together, or want to find out the truth, instead of just wanting to talk about what we want to talk about. So we'll cover that story. To me, I don't know, my jacket looks a little funky because the screen is normally green. I'm in the Brighton, Michigan Pack studio, and I got the green screen on, and it's kind of making my suit look shiny. It's not really shiny, but just wanted to point that out in case anyone's like, that looks a little weird. And I did not have enough time to figure it out and go to my camera settings and fix it. So Just want to let you know. Also, Ron DeSantis who is largely ignoring Trump when he's making comments, but Trump is making comments about Ron DeSantis, and it's very interesting to watch. And so I want to talk about that a little bit as well. So we got a lot of things to discuss. I thank you guys for joining in on Facebook and YouTube, and very much appreciate you. Make sure that you're liking, that you're following, that you're subscribing, that you're hitting notification bells and all that stuff. Just because you might hit subscribe, for some reason they don't, that doesn't necessarily mean that they want to notify you when I'm on. So make sure that you guys are actually following, and make sure that you go back and also watch some long form of videos. Just FYI, I'm trying to get some of my watch numbers up. So make sure that you guys are checking out other content that I have on Facebook, on YouTube. Go to my website, blacktnews.com, check out different articles that I have, different videos that I have. I'll be showing you one of the videos that I just dropped about March for Life. And also in a minute, I'll thank you my sponsors for helping me get there. Check out different merch that we have at the website, like the Black Tea News mug. We got the Constitution is a Glorious Liberty document. And, I got some good, like, Black history type stuff on the site. So, like this cool Frederick Douglass shirt. So, and there's a Be Better, Not Bitter one. Let me show that to you guys really quick. So anyway, that's just right around the corner. So you might want to pick up that stuff. We got cool stuff at the website. So go ahead and check it out. And also, if you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate cost stream. We're on my website, all that good stuff. And so if you would like to support, I do not have a big Crowder bucks Daily Wire $50 million contracts. I'm going to have to make a meme that says Mark safe from a $50 million contract. So if you guys would like to support and help out Black Tea News, I very, very much appreciate it. And make sure that you guys are liking, subscribing, and recommending, and I very much appreciate when you guys do that as well. So I'm in the Brighter Michigan PAC studio, as I said. They do great work in Michigan. They're starting to expand, so it's a great organization. Check them out, support them if you can. But I very much appreciate being in the studio when I'm able to film in the studio. So great organization with great people. I do not have a meme for you guys to talk about, so I'm just going to go ahead. I'm sorry if you were looking forward to the meme so much, but before I jump into one of the stories, I do want to say I did weigh in on the Steven Crowder Daily Wire situation. I did stream it on Saturday night. If you did not see it, you can go to YouTube and you can go see all what I had to say. It's about an hour long. People who watched, you might say an hour long. People who watched it said the hour flew by. I'm very entertaining to listen to. That's what I hear. So go ahead. I tried to be as fair as possible. I do think that overall one party was worse than the other. Just spoiler alert, I thought it was Steven. But I play a lot of content from different creators who talked about it, and people from Daily Wire and Steven, and Timcast. And when people say, well, you should need to see this, you need to see this. Did you see this? Yes, I saw it. I saw so much. I watched so much stuff. I saw Steven's video. I saw the reply video, the whole Jeremy Boring reply going through the term sheet. Wasn't a contract. I watched Candace on Timcast. I watched Crowder on Timcast. I watched the video with the leaked audio. I watched Young Turks talk about it, Sam Cedar talk about it. I watched Lauren Jen talk about it. I watched a lot. So it's pretty thorough. So if you would like to watch it, I very much recommend you do that. Like I said, it's an hour long. It's available on YouTube. I took a lot of time to be able to tell my complete thoughts and to be fair to both of them. But I do have an opinion. I do not think that both parties acted in the best way. Some things I can't blame Daily Wire about, but I think they could have handled their term sheet better. But I think Steven didn't handle it, and there were some things he was not being forthcoming about. So if you wanted to understand that opinion, like I said, made the video, go ahead and watch it. It'll be a good time. So let's start off talking about DeSantis and Trump. Let's get this out of the way. So, does Trump has begun to take digs at DeSantis a bit, and well, here's a video.
So Ron would have not been governor if it wasn't for me, and that's okay. He, number one, he wouldn't have gotten the nomination, and number two, he wouldn't have beaten his Democrat opponent. So then, when I hear he might run, I consider that very disloyal. But it's not about loyalty. But to me, it is. It's always about loyalty. But for a lot of people, it's not about.
So, so many things to say about this. So that's not the only thing he's talking about. DeSantis, he's taking digs about like his COVID response and so someone who's defending Trump did bring up that there was a video of Ron DeSantis talking about how he talked to the White House and they wanted him to close up certain hotspots and he was closing up more. So I don't want anyone to pretend like Florida did, like places didn't lock down, but they weren't locked down for long, and people were really coming at Ron DeSantis, calling him Death DeSantis. They had remember when there was a Grim Reaper like walking around the beach, like people were not kind about Florida staying open. They made DeSantis a big enemy while they lifted up Andrew Cuomo, and of course Cuomo had to resign in disgrace, and Ron DeSantis won by like 19 points his re-election. So it turned out, well for DeSantis, and the people coming against him got, big egg on their face. So, but Trump did come against, folks who he did want places open, like liberate Michigan. He tweeted that stuff out, but at the same time, he also, criticized Kemp for opening too fast or something. He would tweet, "You're opening too fast." And I'm like, so there were some inconsistencies there. So just want to be fair and throw that out there. But for Trump he keeps mentioning the COVID stuff, which I don't understand. Because if he's going to come at Ron for that he can't come for Ron for that and not feel that he's not going to get dinged on it a bit. So I don't see the 4D chess in that sort of attack. So just wanted to throw that out there because that's a discussion going on right now. But as far as the loyalty thing, you got to run when it's your time. Like I think the Democrats, they're more accustomed to the uniformity of the wait your turn. But at the same time, I think they are folks who recognize when they have a shooting star on the hands, because I think for the Democrats, their sole thing is they want to win. And so, for example, you had the Hillary Obama thing, and they did run a vigorous primary, I guess you could say, against one another. And I guess there's always one that's like, nah, it's my time. I'm gonna go ahead and try it, because you had Bernie and Hillary, but the machine clearly wanted Hillary at that time. But what did the machine want with like Hillary and Obama? Obama, not too long ago, from the time he was running for president, he was interviewed and someone asked him, would he run for president? And he said no, because he strongly believes that you should be qualified for a job when you apply. So nothing really changed from that time of him. I don't think much. I don't think that was a big gap of time. So, he ended up running and he beat Hillary, and the Democrats shifting, their support from her, who I guess paid her dues, you could say, and was the person they were uplifting. She stayed by her man. She was in the White House with Bill. She worked on stuff, was in the Senate, etc. That wasn't enough for people who realized where the winds were blowing. So they switched to Obama. They uplifted him, and he became this big cultural phenomenon for them. So I think Democrats, when they want something, like everybody got out of the way for Joe Biden, is very uniform. All the pieces a lot, stacked up. Now they did have a big primary, But they got them together and was like, Joe's obviously our guy. They started cutting some deals and stuff, and it was very evident that he was the way. I don't think he had to be the way, but whatever they decided, they decided. So I think Democrats are very uniform and the people that they run, but I think they're better at seeing a good opportunity when it's in front of them. When it came to like when it comes to Republicans, I think everybody kind of shoots for it. I think everybody pretty much shoots for it. At least from my observation, I think everybody just, I mean, having like a huge primary was like 16 people running when, that year in 2016. So you had like the undercard debate where Lindsey Graham and other folks were, in that one, and the upper tiers debates. There was a ton of people running. And because there were so many people running, it really did give Trump a leg up because he was someone that everybody recognized. And he never really, it wasn't that he got so much of majority support, but he did have the plurality because there were so many people running. Like if maybe other people had dropped out earlier, maybe you would have maybe seen Ted Cruz or something, shoot up somewhere. But it was, you had a Kasich who was going around. I don't know. There were jokes about him just being on the campaign trail so he could eat food, which were pretty funny. But Trump was able to. He's so much more charismatic than like everybody else who's running, and I think that's going to be a problem for DeSantis too, as far as like campaign trail stuff, because Trump just kind of oozes it. And apparently, a critique of DeSantis is he's just not that good at the kiss and baby thing, which people are pointing out and making jokes about this. He's, and I'm not saying he's not nice. I've never personally met DeSantis. I'm not saying he's not personable, but there's people who are just naturally like, oh, give me the, and there's people who force it and it's creepy. I think it's just not, and I'm not saying it's creepy when he like kisses a baby or something. That's just from my understanding, that's just not his wheelhouse. And Trump is, even people who don't like him, they can laugh, they can admit that he's charismatic, he's funny, etc. And if you hate him, you just despise him and, I don't know, start spitting up black bile when he walks by. I don't know. So that's gonna be an interesting dynamic actually on the campaign trail. But Trump does feel, and a lot of people feel, that Trump was cheated out of 2020 and that 2024, it's rightfully his turn again, and that everybody should get out of the way. Now, I want to say this first. People who are so convinced that there should be a Trump DeSantis ticket, that is the worst idea ever. Particularly for DeSantis, there's no upside. There's zero upside. Maybe that would be good for, I don't even know how good that would be for Trump, but I think Trump could get just about anybody, probably be his VP. And maybe the ticket would look more attractive to some people if DeSantis was his VP. In my opinion, I don't think there's any upside for DeSantis. And you could say, oh, well, it'll raise his ID and others. It's not like people aren't talking about DeSantis all the time. He's always in the news, whether people love him or hate him. That's not really a thing he needs. He's governed a state. I think how Trump had, so some VPs, it's like they're there and their job is meaningless. Like Kamala is not VP because she's an important person. I mean, she's a heartbeat away from the presidency, so that is an important role, and you'd hope she can handle it. We both know that she'd be the worst if suddenly she was the president. But she does speeches here and there. They'd like to keep her out of sight, out of mind. Now, Trump did utilize Mike Pence in a capacity that Joe Biden hasn't really utilized and probably would not utilize Kamala for. And I can imagine that he would, if use DeSantis in a similar sort of way. So I don't think he'd be an unuseful vice president, but apparently you don't need to be particularly useful to be vice president. So I think it would largely maybe be a waste of his time. I think waiting because he'll have to end his term early as governor if he did get elected to be the president, or if he was a VP, he'd have to end it early. So, but let's say he just doesn't do either thing, and he just waits his turn. I don't know about you got to take your shot when it's your shot, because you don't know if you're going to have the same momentum behind you. Now, let's say you think he'll have momentum because he'll be the VP, and then when Trump is done, it's like, oh, this is the obvious heir to, being the president because he was my VP. He's young, he's exciting. Like, yeah, of course he's next. You don't know how those 4 years will be. Now, we would assume, of course, you would vote for someone because you want them to be president because you think that they'll be good at the job and steer the country in a good direction. And we did enjoy our 4 years under Trump. I mean, the COVID stuff was a bummer. So we'll just say we at least enjoyed 3 years. And expect, that we'll have good years, that foreign policy will get back together, that we'll have a good economy and be in a good position when the term is over, and then DeSantis can run. But you don't know how their relationship will be at the very end, because I'm pretty sure running was Mike Pence's plan after Trump. Go back with me back in time in 2016, after Mike Pence's debate, which everyone was like, okay, he won that. And I think the analyst only complimented Mike Pence in 2016 because Trump did not do so hot in his first debate with Hillary Clinton. So he was good first like 15, 20 minutes. They were talking about economy stuff. And then it just kind of fell apart a bit. In my opinion, you can have a different opinion, but it kind of seemed to be the overall opinion, and that Mike Pence did really well, and he outshined Trump in his second debate. And people are like, ooh, looked like an audition for Trump running for president. So I think they only complimented him because they thought that would get under Trump's skin. But he did do well. And so Mike Pence, I think, obviously had aspirations to be president, and he has aspirations to be president now. He's one of the people they're talking about being a contender. It seems very obvious that he wants to be president. He's talking to people, the fundraising, or just talking to money people to get that kind of stuff together. That's what his plans are. He didn't do so terrible in the straw poll, Students for Life. Of course, I mean, compared to like everyone else who wasn't Trump and DeSantis, right? So he's interested in it. There are people who are interested in it. Nikki Haley's interested in it. Mike Pompeo is interested in it. And but I think the more people who get in, the better Trump will be set up to win, I think. But the only main contender will be Ron DeSantis, is my prediction. And that's how it looks like the tea leaves are. So if he just decided to be Trump's VP, you don't know how the relationship will end in 4 years. And he might be like, nah, I don't like him. And I don't like him anymore. And I'm picking some other guy. Because Trump talked about loyalty. If you're not totally loyal at, I won't say all times, you can have disagreements, but when it matters, it maybe doesn't matter in the huge grand scheme of things, but if I'm talking about mattering to Trump and you backstab him, he's just going to get a new guy. He's just going to get a new guy. So everyone who's like, oh, I wish they would team up, it's a terrible idea. It's a terrible idea, and there's no upside for Ron DeSantis. No upside. The best thing for him personally would be to actually just run. If he actually thinks that Trump would never stop, Now that's a more complicated thing to deal with, because if he would never stop, and if he loses the primary and decides to run third party, even though it would hand the presidency back to Joe Biden, that would be awful. And I'd like to say Trump wouldn't do that. I would like to say that. I don't know. I don't know that he would self fund like that though. So maybe not. Maybe not. Um. So back back to the whole Trump coming at Ron. I think Ron is just going to mostly ignore him. I think if they end up coming head to head, then I think he'll probably pay play pretty respectful maybe the entire time. And I don't know how Trump's going to handle that. When Tulsi Gabbard was running, I thought she was the most compelling Democrat candidate. When I first saw her, I was like, I think she causes some problems. I'm like, she's young, she's pretty, she's got that cool X-Men hair, Rogue, that little troop of white in her hair. She served, and I don't like stuff that she's saying, but she doesn't seem totally crazy. And I thought for them to just totally reject someone like her and to go with Biden is wackadoodle to me. But that's what ended up happening. But I want a point of contention. My concern was, I'm like, how would Trump even handle her, like on the debate stage? Because she going aggressive at Biden or going, pretty aggressive at Hillary or something, like that's kind of different. People hate those guys. People don't hate Joe Biden, but two guys duking that out is a little, different with that demeanor. But if I don't think she would come at him the same way other folks would. And if she was just like, nice, but like slicing here or there, he'd have to change up his style and debate tactics a bit. So if it was Trump and Ron, and let's say Ron is just like, I'm just going to focus on what we've done well in Florida and how I want to make the rest of the country like Florida, and focus on that, and like be complimentary of Trump and not ever really attack him. I think Trump's going to have to think about his approach on how he come for DeSantis. I think it would throw him off a bit, but I'm sure he'll think of something. So it's too bad there can't be the dream up, team up thing that folks have desired and want. I like I said, I really see no upside for them. I think primaries are good. Trump's been at home for a bit. I think them duking it out a bit will be good for them. I don't know if ultimately end up being good for the country. It depends how much they fight and how nasty it could get. There are some concerns, some rumors about how the primaries might work out. We'll get into more about that later, but I'm hearing some interesting things going on. So I'll tease you with that. But I want to go ahead and move on. So last night, I was on Twitter and I saw a thread from a man who his girlfriend had an abortion, and he ended up deleting his tweet. I'm not surprised that he did, but someone did screenshot it. Secular Pro-Life screenshotted it and shared it. He said, "The woman I thought I loved went and got an abortion today. I feel hurt, sick to my stomach, and dead inside. My now wife did the same thing about 20 years ago." This is someone else replying to him. "We got married and I had our now daughter, but I really don't think I forgave her for it. Still resentful to this day. No one to talk to about it as well. Here for you if you need it, bro." And the original poster said, "This is exactly what I'm afraid of if I try to just forget about it. I don't think I ever could, even though I would want to. And so he also, I guess, turned to the internet, which is a folks out there who like to put all your business out on the internet. The internet is not your therapist. There's a lot of people out there who maybe you talk to and you open up to, and they're your followers or fans. I'm sure you also have trolls if that's the case. But you need to talk to some real people in your life, because the internet just will not be kind. Will not be kind. There's some people who are just really open because I guess stuff will get out anyway, but there's a lot of people who share their business. And I'm not saying he shouldn't have particularly shared this, but he ended up obviously regretting it because he deleted his stuff. But just fair warning, like so many people online can be cruel, and they feel empowered to be cruel because, especially if they have an avatar of like some anime character or just an egg or something, nobody else knows them, their identity, so they feel empowered to be brutal to you because they don't think it's going to blow back on them. So just be really careful when you put stuff out there anyway. But he had said that everybody that he knows basically knows her, so if he opens up to people, they'll know what she did. So he just felt so conflicted and sad. So my advice, well, I said I'm sorry for your loss, but my advice is to just fellas out there, do not be with women. And maybe he didn't think that she would do this. Don't be with women who would do this to your offspring, to your child, to your progeny. Like, don't date them, don't sleep with them, don't marry them. I don't understand. And maybe he thought that she would have talked it out with him and not have done that. Don't sleep with women like this. I don't understand. It should be so simple. Don't sleep with a woman who would do that to your child. Just don't do it. But there were so many people who started retweeting what he said, quote retweeting, and commenting, saying she dodged a bullet, that you have no right to talk about this, or saying that, you should be concentrating on her. She just did the hardest thing of her life. And totally disregarding how this father feels. Just because you can't, an abortion doesn't turn back time. It doesn't erase the reality that there was a person. Yes, a person, a human being, individual, not someone who can live individually on their own, but someone who has distinct, separate DNA. A person. They're not wiped from existence. They're killed. They're no longer with us. But you can't erase the fact that they were here in the first place. So this woman is a mother who has lost a child by her own, methods and doing. And this is a father who has lost a child. I know men who have left women who have, had abortions, and the women want to get back together, and they're like, no, you killed my kid. Like, they can't forget about that. Or people who are so hurt, or people who try to work through it, but always still feel that hurt. And I've known men who paid for women to have abortions, and they feel terrible about it, especially if their girlfriend or wife or who came to regret it, and they know the sort of harm that they cause not only their child but their partner. Like, you cannot forget that there are at least always three people involved in this. Even if you think only the woman should have a say, which I don't understand that. But you're always created from two sets of DNA. There's the mother and the father. And just because you only care about the woman doesn't mean that men don't have feelings. They don't just go away. And in our society, they talk about toxic masculinity and how they teach men not to cry and all this other stuff. And a man opens up about his child dying, and so many people. I wish I could show you guys a thread. He, like I said, he deleted the tweet, and I can't get to like the quote retweets. I was gonna walk you through it, and we were just gonna read them together. But it was so awful. It made me think of this. I went to, some of you know, I went to the Ark in Kentucky. I think it's in Kentucky, with my family. Like my cousin got married, and then we drove down to Kentucky afterwards to go to the Ark because the wedding was in Indiana, and then we drove to Kentucky. And some of my family had been there, but I hadn't been there, so it was an amazing experience. It was really cool. If you can go there, I recommend you going there. It's a really amazing trip. So, excuse me. So, our cousin tagged along, and so we were just looking through. I mean, the arc itself is huge, but they have the inside has these different rooms and different like museums in it within it. So it's like 4 stories, and one of the sections, it was just showing how bad things were through different illustrations. They have these amazing, little models of people. And so me and my cousin were talking about how it's supposed to be as bad as it was back then. And she's like, and I'm like, what makes you think it's not as bad now? She's like, no, it's not as bad. I'm like, and I just started talking about abortion. I'm like, we we kill like 1 million babies a year. Like it's I guess you could say it's done a little neat and silently because it's um right to privacy and all that. I'm like, but what is being done is pretty barbaric. So I don't know about that. And then there's like so much other like sexual demon things going on in our world as well. But I'm like, this particular thing, God was not fond of like child sacrifice. So I'm like, how do you what makes you think we're not at least getting to that point or not there yet? So she kind of disagreed with me. Something else happened later that I think she kind of like was like, I see your point. Um, but the way that they treated that man in that thread w- made me think of that. I'm like, people are so desperate to protect the narrative of abortion that a man isn't even entitled to his own feelings. He wasn't even entitled to his own feelings about what happened to his child. It should just solely still like it's the woman's choice. So we're just gonna pretend it wasn't a life at all now. We're gonna do like Kamala Harris and just omit life. Because she did that with the Declaration of Independence. She's like pursuit of happiness, liberty and pursuit of happiness. She wouldn't say life when she said the quote the other day. We're just gonna totally like exit out. I know people do that, but when you press people, then they'll just dehumanize it or something. But we're not having a conversation about a woman. We're talking about a man who had a loss. And obviously didn't expect that she would do something like that. And that's one of the reasons why he's so conflicted. So I don't know how you can't at least have empathy for the man. But if you have empathy for the man, you have to admit that something bad happened. And people, the Democrats, they used to have this thing where it's safe, legal, and rare. And it was rare because they acknowledged, Joe Biden said back in the day, abortion isn't a right, it's a tragedy. So people could allow abortion to be something that was, it's something we don't like, but maybe it's a necessary evil. They don't believe that anymore. They don't believe that anymore. It's abortion is health care. It's abortion is self care. This is the stuff that they say. So a man saying, I'm grieving my child, they can't deal with that. So they felt they had to punish him. So I it's sad how much societal harm of abortion there is. It's something I talk about because people say just mind your business. What business is it of yours? I think it really has done more damage than people like to give it credit for. And I'm not just talking about the bodies and the lives that are taken. I'm talking about what has to happen to our society to the point where people would fight tooth and nail to keep this thing. Like, what have we transformed into to allow this to happen? Because the lack of empathy in that thread is one of those results where a father, it's bad enough. It's bad enough. They don't expect fathers to fight for their children. It's bad enough that they expect that. They're not allowed to do it. You're not allowed to have a say, and you're a bad person if you think you should have a say. You're a bad person if you just don't support her. Which, by the way, there's plenty of data that women get abortions to please other people, to please, boyfriends or whoever, because they feel pressure. People don't want to talk about that either. But men aren't allowed. Do you know how much would change? How many women probably would not get abortions if their partner would just say, I want to try this. I want to try with you that we can do this, that we are capable. Now, not everybody who you sleep with, who you end up getting knocked up by, do you want in your life. But those are decisions you should make, before you hop in the bed with them. If that's not somebody you want to be hooked up to for 18 years, you better put his pants back on. You better put your pants back on. Y'all better go your separate ways. Like, if you're with someone right now watching, and the person you're with, if you don't want to be linked, I'm not even saying married, but linked up to for 18 years, because you're gonna have to do with baby mama drama, child support, all that different kind of stuff. If they are not someone who you can see yourself being linked up to for 18 years, because maybe you're good with your birth control, accidents still happen. It's very effective, but accidents happen. If you're not willing to be hooked up to that person for 18 years or more, get out. Get out. Get out. But if something has happened, don't, like, the baby, you just got to work it out. Whether you co-parent, sign your custody away to one of the parent or the other, because there are incidents when the men take the baby and raise the baby. That's happened, and there are men who advocate for that. That if you don't want to take care of the child, I'll do it. Don't kill my kid. But society finds it disrespectful for men to stand up for their children. I could never even be attracted to a man who would not stand up for their kids. I find it grotesque. I find it grotesque. And men are scorned for wanting to be a part of the conversation and say, don't kill my kid. But of course their say doesn't matter. So this man, at the very least, all he can do is grieve for his son. And people treated him like trash. Don't tell me that abortion is only between the woman and her doctor. We have felt the effects as a society of what kind of people we create. Don't tell me there's not great societal harm to abortion. There is. And that thread is only a small portion of the evidence. Only a small portion. Okay. Since we're on the topic, before I get into the police beating story, I do want to mention that I did go to the March for Life, not last week, but the week before, during the weekend. And I do want to thank everyone who helped me get there. If you did leave a donation, but you didn't put under the sponsor, apologize. But I do thank everyone who just donates in general, but I do thank everyone who sponsored. And I had bronze and silver and gold sponsors. So I do want to particularly give a shout out to some of my gold and bronze sponsors. So, I mean, my gold and silver sponsors. So, Brighton, Michigan PAC was one of my gold sponsors. We had Right to Life Plymouth and the Michigan Conservative Coalition, and Matt, Lisa Donater, and also my good friend Lana. They did support. There were other people who supported in lower tiers. All that's going to be on the website, but I just want to take a moment to shout out and say thank you guys very much. Um, I'll show you guys one of the videos that I put out today, and there will be more coming. But I love this woman's story so much, and she gave me like the perfect little soundbite for her story. So if you haven't seen it, well, you're about to watch it, but please go ahead and share it. I think it's an important message for people.
Why am I pro-life? Why am I pro-life? I'm a single parent, and I'm here to encourage every single parent that you can make it. The God of the Bible will be your strength. He will be your provider. He will be your protector. You can do it. You can do it. I don't care what they say. They may come up with all kinds of strategies about money and how you're not going to make it. I am a witness that God will keep you. He will keep your children. He will bless your children to do exploits. He will bless your children to be academically sound, to be well in their studies, to be well in their relationships. You can make it. So I'd like to speak to every mother out there, from single parent to single parent. There is no shame in being a mother. There is no shame in standing with your children. It is the right thing to do, and you can make it.
Yes, you can. You can make it.
Why am I pro?
I didn't mean to play it again. So, she's part of a group, great group. I can't wait to get the rest of their interviews out. But I was, me and my sister were walking. I need to get some more interviews, and all of a sudden I heard choir music, and so I tried to get out my phone to record it, but I just was not moving fast enough. But I thought about like asking for them to sing again before I left, but I just let it be, and because it seemed like they had somewhere to go. But I asked them, why they're pro-life, and they just started passing around a mic. And so she was, after I had put my phone away, and they're like, no, she wants to say something. So she was the last one I got, and she was the first video that I ended up putting out about this. So please make sure that you go ahead and share her story. People need to be encouraged. There's so many stories that I heard of women who just needed that boost to say that you can do this. Now, there's some people who ultimately still decide that they, like, I had a friend who had an abortion. It was the second trimester. It was very traumatic. Maybe some of you guys watched her when I had an interview with my friend Quell. She wrote about it in her book, From Faith to Desperation. It's available on Amazon. But she had a traumatic abortion experience. But she had it at the time because she wanted a blank slate. And it obviously wasn't a blank slate, ended up being very traumatic for her. But on top of knowing that she took a life, but there are people who decided to change their minds because someone just encouraged them and said that you can do this. And as I said already, there are women who have abortions who do it to please someone else because they don't know what other people are. They're concerned about what other people will think. They're concerned about what other people will say, and they're being pressured by people, maybe it's their boyfriend or whoever. They're doing stuff to please them. When they need to hear encouraging messages like that, like you can make it, you can do this. Being a single mom is not ideal in the, like, I mean, you should be, my opinion, two people married and having babies and having the families, etc. But we live in a fallen world. Things happen. And we don't always get ideal situations. Sometimes we get two-parent homes and they're not ideal situations. They're not, So just because, I don't know, statistically, I guess things could be, um, you could be scared of the outcomes, but that doesn't mean you can't buck the system. That doesn't mean that you can't, raise great kids, that you can't, it doesn't mean that you're not going to survive or do great things. It doesn't mean that you're not going to find someone else who's going to be a great father to your kids and that you'll have to do it alone. So let life happen, give chance for life to happen, and give your kids a chance for life. So we'll continue to push stuff out. Thank you to everyone again who supported. And if you would like to support Black Tea News, please go to blacktnews.com/donate to help me continue to do stuff like that. And I'm one person doing editing and all kinds of stuff. So I want to grow and continue doing what I'm doing, and pull other people involved. And it just really, really helps if you can help and support in that kind of way, whether it's $10 or $20 or $50, 100 or more. Like, God, seriously, God bless you. But there's a lot more than I want to do, and I have overhead across the stream, run my website, all that stuff. So if you want to support, God bless you, appreciate it. But I do thank everyone who did help me get to March for Life, because I probably it would have been hard to go if I didn't have a couple of sponsors. So thank you. So let's move on. So we know that there was a terrible, 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 terrible police beating resulting in the death of a young man, and people were saying it was worse than Rodney King. And they're like, worse than Rodney King? They're like, it's just as bad or worse. And of course, it led to a death. And we have 5 police officers who have been charged. And they were fired, they were charged. And it's bad when it happens pretty quickly. So there are people who are protesting in, Tennessee. There are people protesting in other places around the country. I saw like protests in New York where they're smashing in police cars and all kinds of other stuff. Look, the justice system is working. I assume justice will be swift and harsh in this situation. Not harsh, appropriately dealt with, we'll say. Well, they should receive harsh penalties. I guess that's an appropriate term. I don't want people to think I'm on the side of the police officer or anything. They did an atrocious thing. I'm not going to play the video. I think a lot of people have seen it, and if you haven't seen it, you probably have chosen not to. So I'm not going to end up playing it. But it is brutal. It was a brutal beating. One that just, from a standpoint of it being immoral, to me, it doesn't make any sense as well. Like, I don't understand why you would do something like that. In general, especially like in the streets like that, it doesn't make any sort of sense. I had mentioned that I'm like, it seems like it's got to be personal. And I've heard people have called me, people sent me messages, people sent comments. I've read comments all over the place about rumors, about different connections. I don't want to get into all that stuff unless I know, but for sure that stuff will bear out. But so many people are trying to make it about race. So there was an article by Van Jones, opinion: the police who killed Tyre Nichols were Black, but they might still have been driven by racism. So there's a lot of narrative like this. You had the mayor of LA who was, asked about it. And they're like, well, this wasn't racism, but I wonder what it would have happened if if Trey was actually a white man. So they're still implying that there's racial aspects to deal with it. So I'm going to go ahead and it's getting kind of late, but read through Van Jones's article and talk a bit about it. So 3 decades ago, when 4 white Los Angeles police officers were videotaped beating Rodney King, the public outcry was heard around the world. In fact, I got arrested for the first time in my life during protests that followed, and I subsequently so sequentially dedicated my career as a lawyer to helping sue rogue cops, close prisons, and reform the criminal justice system. It was a defining moment for the nation and the world. What happened to King was horrifying, but at least he survived the ordeal. Tyre Nichols tragically did not survive. His 29-year-old Black man died earlier this month after police traffic stop and violent arrest in Memphis, Tennessee, according to preliminary results of autopsy commissioned by attorneys for Nichols' family. He suffered extensive bleeding caused by severe beating. On Friday, Nichols' mother, Ro Vaughn Wells, told CNN, "It's still like a nightmare," and it absolutely would be a nightmare the way that they beat on him. And from what I know, and more information has to come out. I don't like to jump on things as they're so fresh because I don't like to misreport or anything, and I like to have perspective. But as of what I know, as of now, they didn't have cause to really stop him. So as I said, there's lots of rumors going on, but those facts will bear out. Since the news of Nichols' death was made known, the world has been holding its collective breath in anticipation of release of the video that captured the violent assault and the possibility of a new outpouring of protests spilling into the streets across the country. That video is expected to be released Friday evening, so this was before the video came out. Obviously, 5 former Memphis police officers fired for their alleged actions during Nichols' arrest have now been indicted on charges including kidnapping and murder. Kidnapping because they're saying they didn't have a reason to detain him. On Friday, Memphis Police Chief Serlin C.J. Davis told CNN, "I was in law enforcement during the Rodney King incident and is very much aligned with that same type of behavior. I would say it's about the same, if not worse." On Thursday, Tennessee Bureau of Investigation Director David Roche described being sickened by what I saw. By all accounts, Nichols was a good guy, a 145-pound skateboarder and Instagram photographer, a Starbucks aficionado. And by the way, I don't believe he has any criminal record as well. So Rose point to something sketchy going on. Learning that your child's life was senselessly stolen from him is every Black parent's nightmare, but surprisingly to many people, the 5 officers charged with viciously beating him were also Black. I think it's every parent's nightmare. How do we explain Nichols' horrific killing, allegedly at the hands of police who look like him? From King beating to the murder nearly 3 years ago of George Floyd, American society has often focused on the race of the officers, so often white, as a factor in their deplorable acts of violence. I don't think there was any evidence that the George Floyd situation, people are triggered, I guess, but that had anything to do with race. And people assume that race always has something to do with these incidents. There was a data analyst who ended up getting fired from Reuters for pointing out a lot of untruths from Black Lives Matter, and he created this huge memo. Had a huge article with a ton of different data. We went through it one day. I often reference it. I think his last name is Krugman, but if you look up data scientist who was the reason why I was fired for Reuters, you'll find the article. But and he references even a data guy from Harvard who did a study on police and their biases, because he expected that, and he's a Black guy, he expected that there would be biases for police officers, for Black and white folks and stuff, and he didn't find it, to the point he was so surprised that he got rid of his team and redid the experiment with a different team. He got the same results. So people are very quick to jump on the racial sort of narrative, but there's data that cuts against that. So I just want to put that out there. But the narrative white cop kills unarmed black men should never have been the sole lens through which we have attempted to understand police abuse and misconduct. It's time to move to a more nuanced discussion of the way police violence endangers black lives. Black people are not immune to anti-black messages. On the sad facts about the anti-black racism is that black people ourselves are not immune to its pernicious effects. Society's message that black people are inferior, unworthy, and dangerous is pervasive. Over many decades, numerous experiments have shown that these ideas can infiltrate black minds as well as white. Self-hatred is a real thing. That's why a black store owner might regard customers of his same race with suspicion while treating his white patrons with difference. Black people can harbor anti-black sentiments and can act on those feelings in harmful ways. So what he's saying isn't anything that's new information. What is interesting though is that there's so many conversations that people will have on TikTok and other places, and they will swear up and down that only white people can basically be racist. And they will say this if you're like, no, black people just can discriminate against people on the basis of race and then treat you badly. And then they'll say something like, well, it's different because you don't have the institutions of power, blah, 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 etc. And so people point out, like, what about if it's a city that has black mayor and black police officers and black city councils and all this, like, what about these black cops? Like, aren't they in positions of authority? Like, so how much authority do you need to have? What if you go to another nation that's like black people, like mostly black people? Like, when do you get to a point where the hierarchy structures are appropriate enough that other people besides white people can be racist? So it's interesting. So at one point they want to say that only white people can be racist because they want to throw in these extra parameters for racism and not even acknowledge that obviously there's situations when black people will hold the institutional power, but then they want to say, hey, when there is something that's blatantly racist, it's obviously because of white supremacy and not because of black people, and the black people have been infected by the white people. Now, if you go into, if there's a neighborhood and there's a shopkeeper, and let's say that they do suspect black patrons over, I don't know, an occasional white person who comes in, he's right that people can have like a suspicion about their own people and the self-hatred but is that something that has to be ingrained in them because of whiteness teaching anti-blackness versus people being jaded by their own people time and time again? I'm not saying it's right to see what someone else has done and be like, okay, because all these black people have done this, I'm just gonna be suspicious of black people. I'm not saying that's right, but I think it's a lot to pin on white folks. I mean, there's some people who have very little interaction. There's neighborhoods that have very little interaction with white people anyway. So can it just be that you've jaded your own too much and people become hardened and then develop anti-blackness? So I'm not refuting him that a sense of anti-blackness exists. I mean, it's like black women trashing black men all the time. Is that not an example? People get uncomfortable when you mention that. Black men trashing black women. Black women want to talk about that all the time. So I'm not rejecting his premise so much right now. I'm just saying I don't think that's something that is particularly white people's fault. So yeah, not particularly. I'm not gonna throw in this whole thing yet, but let's keep reading. That's why I already read that. Black cops are often socialized in police departments that view certain neighborhoods as war zones. Some neighborhoods are war zones. He didn't say that, I'm just pointing that out. In those departments, few officers get disciplined for dishing out street justice in certain precincts, often populated by Black, brown, and low-income people, where there is a tacit understanding that the rule book simply doesn't apply. And I'm not going to disagree with that. Not going to disagree with that. Cops of all colors, including Black officers, internalize those messages and sometimes act on them. In fact, Black neighborhood, the phenomenon of brutal Black cops singling out young Black men for abuse is nothing new. Back in 1989, the rap group NWA highlighted the problem of a classic hip hop anthem in which Ice Cube rapped, "But don't let it be a black and white cop, because they'll slam you down the street top. Black police showing out for the white cop. When it comes to police violence, race does not matter, but possibly not the way that when it comes to police violence, race does matter, but possibly not in the way that you think." So what he's describing, though, can it just be more like a socioeconomic problems? Yes, it happens to be like more brown people in a lot of these inner cities, but that doesn't mean that violence doesn't happen to I don't know, ghetto white kids in the neighborhood or something. So one thing I want to point out before I forget moving forward is that there are people who have a perception that things happen to Black people that would only happen to Black people. Let's particularly talk about George Floyd. There's so much commentary surrounding that case where people were saying this would never happen to a white person. This would never happen to a white person. And that's just not true. It's just not true. There's been some brutal shootings of white folks, but Tony Tempa is someone police had in custody, and if you haven't seen that video, he like died suffocating in like a barrel of hay. So to say that something like the situation where the knee on the neck, which if you didn't watch the trial, the knee actually wasn't on the neck, but which was like a kind of moment in the trial. People were so convinced that it would just never happen to anyone else, and it just wasn't true. So if that's your narrative in your head, that people just wouldn't treat, any other race this kind of way, you can see how the racial animosity just continues to grow because people don't have that information. But they don't report on that stuff all the time. And people don't march for that stuff all the time. There was one instance where I think a white person was shot or something. They heard there was a police shooting or something, and some protesters showed up, and then they found it was a white guy, and they like left. So there's definitely so much racial narrative that is driven for the police brutality thing, and to me it doesn't make sense, because if this is your passion issue, which I don't think people like police brutality. There's people who question we have discussions about, is this appropriate, is this not appropriate? And in this situation, I think everyone's on the same page that those cops did a terrible thing and they should be charged. And glad that they are charged, and feel terrible for the families. I feel embarrassed for the families of the cops. I feel heartbroken for the Nichols family. So I think everybody's on the same page as far as that. But as far as police brutality in general, people don't like it. When I first got involved in politics, like with other people and communities and going to events and stuff, one of the very first events I went to, people were talking about how they didn't like the militarization of police and some of the stuff that they had in the county that they were getting. And I just thought that was so strange. I'm just like, what do you mean? Like, don't you just trust the police or something? It was just it's so weird to me. But it's better for folks to go find a libertarian leaning Republican who really knows the laws and want to see change. If you want to impact some kind of police reform, want to tackle police brutality and this stuff, don't go run to Black Lives Matter or some group that wants to keep it super racial. Just find some people who want to get something done that really believe in tackling the problem and know the law and don't want to so much make it about some kind of movement and raking all this cash. They just really care about your rights. Like, find people like that and work with them. But people being so, I want to make this an issue of black and white and have you reading White Fragility. uh, you're dividing your potential base of who can help you overcome this issue. You really are. So if people really wanted to solve it or work towards solving it rather than having a narrative that they want to push, you could really do some good things. But it's more important to a lot of people to keep having the racial division because it's a good grift, because it helps people amass power, whether it's money or votes or whatever. So people, both sides of the aisle, are just addicted to outrage culture, and this is something that is a really lucrative, unfortunately. I'm not saying Van Jones isn't making some good points, but I think the issues are more socioeconomic that he's laying out and hasn't really pointed out, like, himself. But let's keep reading. Stricter oversight is needed regardless of race of the officers. In short, racial animus can still be a factor even when the perpetrators are all black, and that's especially true if these actions are part of a broader pattern and practice within the Memphis Police Department. It's a sad, which I heard that they lessened protocols and stuff to get more people in, and they were really interested in diversity hiring and other stuff. So I'm sure there's issues that systemic issues they're gonna have to look at. It's a sad fact, but one that's old as time itself. People often oppress people who look just like them. It goes, back to my point about the shopkeepers. The vast majority of human rights abuses are committed by people who look exactly like the people they are abusing. Wells, who has not watched the video of her son's beating, told CNN through the tears that she feels sorry for the officers. They have put their own families in harm's way. They have brought shame to their own families. True. They brought shame to the black community. I really feel sorry for them because they don't have to do this. Regarding the officer's race, Wells also noted to CNN that violence like what happened to her son is about how some bad cops use their power over black and brown victims. The key to reducing the incidents of police violence is stricter oversight and swifter punishment. I am glad that the offending officers were quickly fired and charged. We need more of that, and not just when the cops are black. Civil rights advocates once pushed for more racial integration in police departments in hopes that more black cops would lead to less police brutality. But while racial integration is important for basic fairness and opportunity, it is not something that's going to stop police abuse. I guess I'm looking at how much longer. It's just 2 paragraphs. Any system needs to put into place adequate checks and balances. Without meat inspectors, you would see a lot more food poisoning. Without building inspectors, you would see a lot more buildings falling down, and policing is just as much, even more, in need of rigorous internal monitoring that roots out bad cops and holds the entire police department to the highest standards of conduct. Unless there is real oversight with the real consequences for wrongdoing, bad actors will take advantage, lower the practical standards for everyone, and put all of us at risk. And without aggressive oversight, the swift punishment will continue to see stomach churning acts of police violence against black men by cops of every color. So that's the end of the article. I don't think it was so crazy, but I think it misses the mark on stuff. Like I said, a lot of it could be social economic, and if there are people who are still pointing to like white supremacy. Now some people, and he didn't make this point, are saying that I guess he didn't say it specifically, but maybe it doesn't mean he doesn't believe it, but just the institution of, no, he's still for policing. He's not, at least in this article, does not call for the disbanding of police or anything, but people say that the institution of police, they just kind of create this or attract people who are going to be aggressive and do these terrible things. And the truth is that you're always going to find predators who go into some kind of position where they can have some kind of power, whether that's someone who's in a manager position at a job. It could be teachers at a school. Unfortunately, you're always going to have to deal with bad people who get into positions of power. And maybe they're not even that bad when they take the positions of power. There are people who get into the police force. They're all optimistic. But there's some people who've been hardened and maybe become dirty cops, or maybe they're accustomed to just doing these things to get things done because that's how they feel in these war zone neighborhoods. And then they're like, no, you have to conform. And there's some people who have gone on wide-eyed, bushy-tail, want to go into the police force, and they don't like what they see, and they end up leaving because they can't take it. I saw someone say that their son wanted to be cops since they were 8, and then they didn't like what they saw, and they ended up getting out and was heartbroken because their whole dream wasn't what it lived up to be. So there's all kinds of different factors going on. So you do need oversight, and you do need rigorous training. But this situation with these 5 officers, I don't like, people say, nah, it's racial, or this is what they teach you to get away. I'm like, nothing about this makes sense besides the brutality of it. I'm like, why would you do it in broad? It wasn't broad daylight, it was at night, but I'm like, in front of people. Like, there's houses, it's in the street, like, you have body cams, there's cameras in other places. Like, it's just the dumbest thing. Even if you're in a neighborhood, in some kind of community where there's like dirty cops, would the dirty cops like teach you to do that in the open? It's so stupid. So I don't, there's no reasoning for that sort of savagery, period. But it's just beyond, it's just kind of confusing how stupid it is. So they're going to throw the book at these guys. What they did was atrocious. The mother was right. They did embarrass their families, the community. And of course, they took a life, robbed someone of their life. And it seems like they did have no justification or even why they started it at all. But perhaps there's rumors that there's personal stuff that would make more sense to me. But at the same time, I'm like, I don't understand why you throw your life away. So when people talk about Black Lives Matter, of course, there was a big response. People say, no, all lives matter. And there's those big arguments. But here's something I would say your life has to matter. And this is a situation where they didn't care about that particular Black life. They probably didn't mean to kill him. But, what happened. But if you cared more about your life, you would make better decisions. If you cared more about your life as an individual, where you're going, the people around you, you would just make better decisions and not have done this thing that is heinous. So if you want to start building better communities, just period, in general, I'm talking in general now, and still in the minds of these kids, like, you gotta think it through better. Don't do things that are gonna just totally wreck you, where you're not able to build up your life. They destroyed their lives. They took someone else's life, but they destroyed their lives. And that's just a craziness. I'm glad I can't wrap my mind around, because I guess that would make me crazy too. But another thing I do want to point out about the people who are taking the approach that it's still white supremacy, because white supremacy and cops, they build the narrative or the sort of thinking that you have, where you gotta go into these communities and their war zones, etc. And there's such a push for white supremacy to be behind everything, behind everything bad, and even behind things that are good. And I'm not joking. And I've shown you guys this infographic a ton of times. It was so telling, I'll probably never delete it from my from my setup. Now, this was the African American History Museum that made this. Aspects of white culture in the United States. And so they have rugged individualism, family structures, emphasis on scientific method, like objective and rational linear thinking. Those are signs of whiteness, which is crazy to me and really offensive. And it goes on. Hard work is the key to success. Stuff about your work ethic, that Christianity is the norm. um, which, if you know the origin of Christianity and how it spread, that's hysterical. Um, Wealth equals worth. Your job is who you are. To respect authority, respect and authority is a sign of whiteness. Planning for the future. Now, how the heck is that a sign for whiteness? I want to get a little racial, but like, have you like, you could tell Asians and how they prep for their families to do certain careers and whatever. You're gonna say that's whiteness? Okay, of course that's crazy. So what's the purpose of listing these things that are like obviously good? Like intent matters and um, you know, being polite. All kind of crazy stuff they got in here. What's the point of mentioning these things and calling those things a sign of whiteness? Because if your community or someone, like if a black person isn't able to show up on time, or they don't respect authority, or they're not polite, or they're not optimistic for the future, then you pointing that out and having a problem with them not being that way, there's something wrong with you, because those things are just things that have been adapted into the United States from whiteness culture. So you expecting someone else to respect authority or being polite or something, that's just how you've been conditioned into whiteness. So if other people don't have that, then that's just how they are, I guess, at their base. And you've been indoctrinated. So you shouldn't expect people to show up for work on time, because that's white supremacy. And you're probably thinking, Christina, that's stupid. They did end up deleting this graphic because they got such backlash. I had told my cousins about it, and I had showed it to them, but I guess they thought it was a joke because it was so ridiculous. It's one of the most racist, dumbest things I've ever seen in my life. So I will never not stop talk about it. I'll never stop talking about it, because it's so crazy. So, but the point is that everything is white supremacy. Everything is racism. Everything is racism. Particularly white supremacy. And you can't get away with it from it. You just can't. You just can't. And last thing, I guess, before I want to move on, when Van Jones brought up self-hatred, I know that people think that's a real thing, but they'll throw that at anybody who, especially if you I like, people say that about, I've got that accusation before. I'm just like, I'm for what? For, I don't know, standing for Judeo-Christian values and just thinking that everyone in particular, not just black people, but everybody should be better. If you have any sort of criticisms, or if you don't like Black Lives Matter, for example, they're like, oh, you just hate yourself. It's like, no, I just don't like the organization that says things that would purposely hurt the black family. I don't like, they have had stuff in there what we're about, like destroying cisgender privilege, and not cisgender privilege, like, I think that's what they said. And if you've ever looked up stuff like about that, they say is cisgender privilege, it's pretty crazy. But I mean, you probably see it here and now with a lot of the trans stuff going on. But that's kind of stuff that Black Lives Matter was supporting and pushing, not just police brutality. So my suggestion is to not ever hook up with folks like that, and go find yourself some libertarian-leaning Republicans. And even if you're on the left, if you really care about this issue, if you genuinely care about this issue, I'm not saying go find yourself a hawkish neocon or something. I'm saying go find yourself a libertarian-leaning Republican and a group of them. Go to a meeting. You don't have to like everything they say, but say, you know what, I would like to make some ground, gain some ground in as far as police brutality, and make sure that we're holding these people accountable. I know you guys really know the law, know your stuff. How can we combine our time and our resources, to move something forward? And you work with them to try to get some stuff done. If you really care about this issue, do not go to Black Lives Matter. If you really cared about it. because one group really, really cares. And one group might care a little bit, but they want your money and they want their grift. They have their grift, and they have a lot of other agendas, a lot of it involving LGBT stuff and drag queens and other. They invest in weird stuff. Their focus is not particularly to stop stuff like this. I'm not saying that they want it to happen. Maybe they. I don't want to impugn their character too much, I guess. Though I can say some things I feel, but I guess I won't go more than that, though you can probably suspect. But they're focused on a lot of woke stuff that will ultimately harm the Black community. Go find yourself some libertarian Republican. I'm seriously. Those people know the most about it, and they very passionately care. Very passionately care. Anyway, I thank you all for watching. For watching today. That is my show. Please go to blackteennews.com. Check out different content on my website, different articles, videos, etc. Please check out, if you go to my website, the splash page has my book on it. Of course, God is Blatantly Against Abortion. It is available for pre-order for the ebook version. It's not available for the paperback version for ebook, but I mean, the paperback isn't available for pre-order yet. If that's the way that you would prefer to have your book, you guys can sign up for updates to make sure that you know when that becomes available for you guys to do that. But I do normally like to make secular arguments. I'll just briefly go into why I wrote this book. I would say, hey, life starts at conception. Therefore, the right to life should begin at that point in time. And then people would say, life starts at first breath, or they say Numbers 5 is about abortion, and they start throwing all this stuff, and then I'd have to start like debunking them. I'm like, no, that's not true. And so I started writing articles that addressed those things and debunked those things, and it just kind of kept evolving. And I'd even get into conversations with people. I'm like, well, we should protect life at conception because that's when it begins. And the people would say, well, it seems to me that you think life is just inherent, like all human life is inherent. Is that a religious belief? And I'm like, why would you not think that it's a good thing to believe that all life is inherent, valuable? Why would you not think that? I'm like, it's quite the compliment toward religion, I guess. But I'm like, I can't deny being religious, but I believe that other people feel that way who are secular. So I started just working on this book. And so it goes through the theology, it goes through the science, it goes through philosophy, but it also makes a case about some of those values that, like, why it's important to treat life like it's intrinsically valuable, why life itself is intrinsically valuable, why it's important to have objective morality, not subjective ever whims. So it makes that case too. So there's a lot going on within it. It's a very good abortion related book, whether I think if you're a believer or non-believer, but I think particularly be something for believers. And apparently it's something that we need because there's definitely a lot of pro-choice Christians or people who claim to be Christian or pro-choice out there. So I was talking to somebody last night. They're like, I'm gonna get your book and I'm gonna leave it at my neighbor's door. Or they're gonna give it to their neighbor because they were saying, she was telling me some stuff they were saying, and it was just ghastly, totally bonkers. So it's a labor of love, and I'm very excited for it. So I'll go ahead and make your pre-order. And if you're out there and you would like me to speak at a school, speak at your church or group or something, you can also go to the website and make arrangements. I want to make some different stops as I talk about it. So if you want to, I don't know, kind of make it a tour thing, I'd be glad to do that. So go ahead and go to the website. Other than that, please check out different stuff I have in my store that does support the show. We got Life Wins, Rowan Casey aborted. We got these cute little You Are Not That Special mugs. We got that also in shirt as well. We also got some pro women stuff in there. So the Club XX lifetime membership. So check out different stuff. I got the My Money, My Business. I got that because so many people are like, it's none of your business whether they get an abortion. I'm like, don't y'all want taxpayer dollars to fund it? So I made that shirt. So I also do write other books, FYI, while you're here. I have 15 that are published. So that's a picture with me and all my books. So if you go to blackteennews.com and hit the merchandise page, the button for it, there is a banner at the top with all my books on it, and it'll take you to my book website. So I write historical fiction fantasy, got paranormal romance, I got a contemporary fantasy, action adventure books, children's chapter books, and in one faith book that's out. So I got a lot of stuff that you guys can check out. And since Black History Month is coming up, my historical fiction fantasy does take place in the Civil War. Imagine like X-Men meets Harriet Tubman, and that's what you get. It's when people ask, because they come to my booth or something, which when I go to different conventions, and they're like, "Which book do you recommend?" And it's very hard, a very hard question, because I love all my babies, but it's usually this series. So go ahead and check it out. It's on Amazon and Kindle, and it's on Kindle Unlimited. My book, of course, God is Blatantly Against Abortion. I will be like publishing wide though, so you will be able to get it in other places than Amazon. It's gonna be, I have all these books, but they're just all on Amazon. But this is my first one where I'll be like going wide, so that's pretty exciting, doing something different this time. So God bless you guys. Thank you for watching. Went a full hour and 30 minutes today. God bless you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.